Well, good afternoon and happy Monday. And we're back on Mondays with Mondays with Michael live here on Facebook. For those of you who follow this little video sequence we're doing here, this bit of video training. Last week we came in not on Monday, we came in on Wednesday. We were out of town for the weekend. For those of you who follow me on Facebook, we were in Tampa, Florida, checking out Yankee spring training and visiting some friends that we have in the Florida area. And as you all know, the Yankees will win the World Series this year, so we just want to make sure we get there at the beginning. I hope everyone had a nice weekend. We had a nice weekend here in D.C. It was just a bit rainy here in D.C. Temperatures were pretty good, but it was definitely a rainy weekend. And looking outside today, Monday, it's still raining. So we're back on schedule with Monday. Today's session is really for trainers and for those HR directors who train. We work with a lot of HR directors who aren't officially trainers, but they do a lot of stand-up facilitation and training within their organization. A lot of times the compliance training, but they also do some of the soft skill stuff. So today's session is on, as you saw in the header, openers, closers, and difficult participants. Oh my! For those of you who know what that means, you're as old as I am. Remember some of the movies from way back when. So we'll start today talking about openers, and we'll get to difficult participants, and then we'll get into closers. So as we've talked about in prior sessions, when you prepare your training class, it takes a lot of time and some practice to actually prepare a successful training class. And if you want to prepare a successful opener, this is going to take some time. This is not something you can do on the fly at the start of your session. This is something that needs to be planned out, needs to be thought through. It needs to have some type of goal. What are you trying to do with that opener? So as always, I'm going to go to my notes here, jot some notes down, and we'll share with you today. So for your opener, when I start a training program, when I want to do an opener, I have to decide whether that opener is tied to the content. Is it something that I want to start teaching in the beginning to get people energized about the content? And will that activity tie into the content itself? When we do DISC training, sometimes we'll do a DISC icebreaker. But if we're doing other types of training, whether it be listening skills or something else, we may do something else to tie it back to the content. So does your opener tie back to the content that you're going to be delivering in the program? Is it a learning opportunity? Is your opener a networking opportunity? As we've talked about in the past, a lot of people come to training to meet other people in the organization. So is your opener tied to a situation or tied to where others can meet each other in the room, either in small groups, or you mix them up in small groups? All you may have done in the past, name, what you do in the organization, fun fact about yourself. Some of you have probably done the true-false exercise. Everybody writes down 2 truths and 1 false about themselves. And you kind of go around the table, around the room, and you find out interesting things about your colleagues. You may mix them up a couple times when you do this. So is your opener a networking opportunity that's not tied to the content? But as always, you want to try to do something to open up the class. Now, depending on how you build your training program, your opener may be tied to something that was done pre-class. Like there are times we'll actually send out something to participants for them to engage in prior to the class, and then they bring the results of that, what they've done alone, to the classroom. So is there something you can do as far as pre-work that becomes part of your opener to start the program? So those are some ideas on how to get your openers going, how to get the class engaged. As we talked in the past, you want to do something every 8, 9, or 10 minutes with the class, but this is a good way to get them engaged in the learning and in the content. Second is how to deal with difficult participants. And we all have difficult participants, and there are folks who have written many, many books about difficult participants. So let me give you a couple of tips that we've tried and worked over the years. First of all, why do we have difficult participants? Well, sometimes it depends what type of training you're delivering. Now, if you're delivering compliance training where participants have to be in the classroom because they have no choice, you may tend to have a few more difficult participants because, frankly, they just don't want to be there. They know they have to be there. They don't want to be there. And you can preface this in the beginning of the class by saying, okay, I understand that a lot of you don't want to be here today. This is required training. I know we need to go through this, but we need to go through this. So bear with me. I'll do my best to get through it. Please do your best to be an active participant. We'll get through it together, and let's move on. So there's that way of handling that compliance training. But you may have training that someone signed up for, and now they're being a bit difficult. So a couple ways to handle this. The way I tend to handle it most of the time is I just kind of walk toward that participant and answer a couple of direct questions, and that usually gets them, a little more quiet in the background. Sometimes you'll get a couple folks that are chatting in the background. All of our training classes have breaks along the way, So if you find that someone may be not participating, kind of laying back, chatty with a couple of folks, during the break time, you may want to pull these folks aside and just say, hey, what's going on here? You know, why do you guys seem to be off topic? And is there something I can do or change my delivery to help the situation? Sometimes we'll find out that they actually need to be someplace else. Something has happened in the business, and though they really want to be in this class today, they have to be someplace else. Well, then excuse them. You know, if you're delivering the class again in a couple of weeks, have them come back in a couple of weeks. Don't tie anyone down because some emergency is happening within the company or within the client. Let them go. And, you know, bring the class back together, explain that Mary and Joe needed to go take care of a client situation, and move on with the class. Sometimes they may not agree with something that the way it's been presented, and we can have that discussion during the break, but you want to try to nip this in the bud as soon as you can. Normally, if your class is engaged and you're doing things all the time and you have a very active and engaged audience, your opportunities to have these difficult participants are less because they're not just sitting there, frankly, bored in the back of the class. They're actually engaged in the learning. They take some of what they know and they share it with their colleagues in small groups. So that's another way to handle difficult participants. But again, I would be a little bit proactive during the breaks, be a bit proactive during the breaks. Okay, now closers or enders, however you want to close them. So you want to build your training program, obviously, around a closing activity. Now, that closing activity can be done individually. It can be done as a group. I tend to like doing it in pairs. I like this whole concept of learning partner or accountability partner or partners within the classes we deliver. So we have folks get in twos, get in threes. They actually do something together to make a commitment to each other, to take some type of action plan moving forward and get together on a regular basis to do that. We have done closers in the past where it involves the entire group. You can have the group break down into smaller groups and come up with action items or debrief what they've learned or give me the top 4 things you're going to take away from this class. But you want to do something so that when you close the program, people feel not only accountable to themselves, but to each other in the classroom, and accountable to doing something based on what they've done in the classroom. When we deliver our DISC programs, we have another tool that we use. It's called myeverythingdisc.com that we talk about in the classroom. Depending on the client, we either turn it on before the class or turn it on after the class. But we actually walk them through a series of slides and giving them this opportunity to do something post-session. Where they go back and they do some stuff on the site, they run some reports, they have some deeper conversations. So you want to keep the learning going, and you do that by setting up a closing situation that ends the program properly. People feel they've had a chance to share what they're going to work on moving forward, and you give them a tool that they can use moving forward. Now that said, you may not have this program that you're delivering may not have a specific tool, but you may want to encourage managers who aren't in the room to have follow-up coaching sessions with the individuals who just went through your class. You could set up some type of webinar online post-session after folks have had a couple of weeks to try the new skill or the new behaviors that you're trying to implement, and have a follow-up session online. But you want to close properly so you can close out the session, give some action items that they can work on, and do something to follow up. And if, you know, for folks like us that aren't in the room, they're not in the company, we really rely on our trainer partners and our HR partners to do something post-session as a group or one-on-one, so they keep the learning going, So those are just some thoughts I have. Again, as always, this needs to become part of your planning process. So remember, you need to plan your openers, you need to plan your closers, and then you need to work on your difficult participants. It's an art, takes some time, but you'll figure it out as you go along. Our session next Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. We go back to supervisors next Monday, so we're talking to supervisors. So if you're a supervisor, please join us. And our session will be on harassment. We talked about this before the holiday, but we're going to talk about it again. Harassment for supervisors, your duties, your responsibilities, what are your legal responsibilities, what are your responsibilities to the organization you work for, and when you see it, what do you need to do about it, and then we're going to give you some tools to help out the learning of that process. So thank you all for hanging out today in the room. This is Mondays with Michael live here on Facebook. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Monday.